and I am going to do a short little video to help you release your own energy blocks. But before we begin with the technique of doing that, I just want to discuss energy blocks so that we're on the same page of what I mean. Because there's lots out there about energy and how it works, and everyone's got their own understanding and knowledge, beliefs, etc. So I don't really think we need to get too complicated into that. But what we do need to, I suppose, agree on before we move forward with it is what an energy block is, so we know what we're actually releasing. The way that I see it is that we have energy that runs through our body that makes us function. And what can happen through different means, maybe through trauma or maybe something that we've just physically inherited within ourselves, we can get these energy blocks, this almost roadblock that comes up, and it stops our standard flow of energy. So normally we would just have a lovely line of flow. Say for instance, we're meeting someone new will walk in there, we will have this energy that comes along with that. We'll have a few little things like, I wonder what they're like, who they are. We'll make some assumptions. Unfortunately, we'll have some bias in there. We'll have all those sort of things that will come along, and we'll have a lovely conversation with them. Now, when you might have had an experience when you met someone and it went wrong, and say it was a first date or a boss or something like that, or meeting the in-laws, whatever it happens to be, and it actually went pear-shaped. You said some silly stuff, everybody laughed at you, not with you, those sort of things, and you went away and you're like, oh, so next time, you go to with a boss or the new in-laws or a new couple or whatever it is, you put this little shield up first. You basically lead a bit more intuitive before you just calmly open your mouth. And so you're putting up a little block. Now that's not a bad thing. We learn and we grow on risk. But what happens is when you start putting those blocks up more and more, and say, you're in a car accident, for instance, and then you go to get in a car and you look across and you're like, oh, I can't do this before you've even started, because you're like, I remember that from last time. And so your brain comes to that and it just goes, I've hit this. And the only way forward is to you can't go through that. It is a block. You have to sort of go a long way around. So you've got to start convincing yourself of what the stats are of being in a car accident or being in two car accidents, because you've already been one, where you're going, what the speed limit is, all those sort of things, who's driving now compared to who was driving. You start to put all those kind of energy towards, and it's exhausting. It's like, I haven't even got there, and all this anxiety starts to build up on the side because you're trying to go around this roadblock. And things like this can be very big roadblocks, and they can be really little roadblocks, like speaking to a boss and then next time putting up a little bit of an energy resistance isn't a massive roadblock, but if you keep doing that, where you start to go into conversations where you get to the point where you don't want to meet anyone new, where you don't want to go out, you're like, I don't know what to say, I feel really uncomfortable, all those sorts of things, then that energy block has grown. And sometimes an energy block can be from one trauma, like a car accident, but another way can be one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. And what would have been tiny little sort of, oh, hang on, block, let's go around that, has now become a really big block. And when we talk about someone's fear or someone's safety or, those sort of bigger control ones, you actually find that when you break them down, they often, if it wasn't from one dramatic trauma, they are made up of lots of different things, and it's got bigger and bigger. And actually, by having that fear in there, you've created more fear and more fear and more fear. And so when we start to break that energy down, we've got to actually start chipping at it. It's like, it's not just like one kabam, gone. And I do a podcast called One Foot in Both Worlds with the lovely Tanya, and we talk about that actually throughout our podcast. And in particular, I think we did one that was on energy blocking, and we talked about how Tanya was putting forward whether or not you can just sort of bam that energy in the walkway, go, I'm cured, look at me, I can jump back in a car, I don't care anymore. And, I don't think that's impossible. I think some very strong energy workers may be able to do that. But I do feel that there is sort of a twofold. This is actually helping you release that energy so that you don't have such anxiety and you don't have the guards and the shields up. And I'll talk about them in a second. And so that you can then go and start to do the work of getting in a car, driving, doing the risk of it and seeing how you feel with that, and then dealing with the emotions on a smaller scale rather than this big energetic block. So I just mentioned shields too, and I think that it's really important to understand what I mean when I say that. And I live a pretty ordinary life. I'm an interior designer by training, although I do a lot of marketing and management as well because I did a degree in that. So I do kind of a little bit of everything. I would say I'm fairly entrepreneurial. And the reason I say that is my life is fairly normal. I'm not what I would say living in kind of this spiritual land or anything like that. In fact, most people who know me wouldn't even understand my level of intuition, my ability to see spirits and things like that. It's just something that I don't talk about in my everyday life. But with my intuitive skills comes the ability to see blocks. So I can tune into someone and I can see more than you would just see from the physical, which a lot of us can, but I think I've worked out in my older age what I thought everyone could do. I can get quite deep into that. And one of the things I see when I meet someone who has a lot of anxiety in particular is I see these kind of shields that they put up, and each of them are usually attached to kind of an energy, a stuck energy. And so these energy blocks come up, and you'll meet people who've got chronic fatigue, and in many cases they have started with a small part of chronic fatigue and it's just got worse and worse, and it's got so far over many years to the point that they even leaving their room is exhausting. And when we actually put up an energy block, we actually it takes physical power for us to do that. So if I do an energy work, for an hour, I can be exhausted for ages, and I often get really hungry. And so one of the things that it's important to understand is that when you're starting to put these energy blocks, it takes energy from your body to do that, so you can feel tired. Say you're in a relationship where you're not happy. Nobody's fault, you're just not happy, and you're trying to work out actually what it is. When your partner comes into the room, you may get this sort of anxiety straight away, and you put these guards up, you'll hear. Well, those guards are sort of what I'm talking about, these kind of layers in between. And before your partner's even opened their mouth or said anything, you've got like this and this and this and this already sort of set in place, and it gets to the point where they're exhausting to be around. But actually, if someone else walked into the room, like your best friend who had done the same thing and had the same conversation, you'd be like, oh, that was good. In fact, I feel better for that because I didn't have my guards up and I let their physical energy come into mine, and I actually gained, because we get energy from each other. So when you go to a party and everyone's dancing and there's music, which you also get energy from, you just start to get this vibe, and everyone goes, oh, wow, I was so tired, but now I'm not. Now I've found my second wind, I've got this. And you're actually getting that second wind from everyone else and from the vibration of music and those sorts of things. So when you put guards up, you stop yourself from getting that energy from people that we actually really need to charge our battery. And we cannot charge our battery full without getting that through human. That doesn't mean you're going to have to get it from that one person. If, for instance, you're not in a good relationship with your partner and you're not getting from them, you might find that you go and see, one of your mates, and you will actually get that sort of connection from them, and you sort of get that part of your battery recharged from other people. But in saying that, having those energy blocks makes it hard for you then to have a good discussion or good communication with whoever it is, whether it's your boss or whether it's, we talked about a few situations earlier as well. It makes it harder for you because you're already exhausted before you got there, or tired before you got there, because you've got these barriers up. They then can't connect in with you. And so you're seeing a very human version of them, and they're seeing a very human version of you without that really kindness and the genuine journey that your spirit's going on. And without noticing it, we really notice the journey that our spirits are going on when we meet with each other, and some people more than others. And so the less that you have sort of barriers between that, the more that you can sort of understand each other on a deeper level. And then when you put the guards up in between and you're not doing that, you actually just see physical. And the problem with physical is it can be really frustrating and annoying when you just see that, you don't see the second level. People can irritate you more than what it is. I don't really understand why that irritation is there right in this moment. But I do know that when you've got your guards up, people are more like annoying to you. It's just like, oh, I hate the way they chew, and I hate this, and I hate this, and it's all these guards up. You see it when a relationship splits up. All the things that you loved about that person that you just saw through because you had that really positive energy coming in. It was like, I don't care if they chew with their mouth open, which I hate, by the way, but and thankfully my husband doesn't do that, but that things. And then when you actually start to put your guards up and you stop getting that really lovely positive energy coming in from that person and giving that back to them, you start going, oh my gosh, he chews with his mouth open. How did I not know that? That is so annoying. I can't even hear him because all I can see is his food going around in his mouth. They're the type of things that when we get these guards up that we start to get frustrated and annoyed by, and we actually start not liking people. Or situations that we're in, we just don't get that vibe. You go into a room and you think, oh yeah, I'm having a great time, and then you see that person over there that's been from work that annoyed you, or your partner's there and you didn't expect them to, then all of a sudden your guards go up and then you're not getting energy from anyone. You're starting to go, oh, hang on a minute, I'm stuck here and I'm not enjoying this, I'm not having fun, I'm super tired, all these things are happening, I can't get into the vibe, I can't find that second wind. Okay, so I have the gift of the gab. I'm really sorry about that. So I may have gone a long way around that, but I just also want to make sure that I'm explaining in a way that everyone understands where we're at, because one of the first things is sort of 5 steps that I look at, 4 main steps, and then we call the 5th one repeat. And the first one is openness. It's openness to that you can actually, unblock energy. And if you're not, you've actually got that walls up and that barrier up, you're not going to be able to do this very well. The next question is that I think needs to be answered is, can we release our own energy, or do we need someone else to do that? And the answer is 100% you can release your own energy. But in saying that, if you have energy that you're struggling to do, or you're not very good at this technique at this stage, it doesn't hurt to actually get people around. You'll hear the word energy circle. And to be honest, an energy circle can be anything, like a book club or a friend sitting around having a cup of tea. It doesn't have to do much. Even just, I think my husband and I and my son all the time, we do energy circles, and that can be over the phone, and we sit there and we chat about our lives and things like that. And just that release and that exchange of energy charges the battery that we're talking about. That is really important for us to do, and especially with family and loved ones, because and close friends, because you actually have all your guards down, so that energy exchange can be even better, and you can talk through some of those. And by doing that, you can actually release some of those little energy blocks and those anxieties. They always say with anxiety, talk about it. Talk about it is one of the first things that you can do, and then you actually release that kind of energy. Yes, and also there are people that are just highly intuitive that have the power to move energy more than others, or I should say the knowledge to do it. And so it doesn't, if you've got a big stuck energy and you're having trouble with this, and the trauma that's attached to it, or the lots of little incidents in your life is just too big, or you don't know when to start, absolutely reach out to someone who can do this for you. There will be groups that you can do this for free, and there also are people who you can pay to do this. And either way is great. The reason I'm giving this technique for free is because I truly believe that energy healing should just be something we all know, and I would love it if I could teach some people to do it, remind them about energy so that then they can teach more and they can teach more, and then eventually the where I would love to see it is that it's just like in like a part of our lives. It's just like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Oh, okay, why don't we move some energy together? Or have you tried moving energy? Without that sounding like woo woo or la la, it just should be like something that we actually do. And we do already do it in a way, we just use different words to do it. The word acknowledgement is always the start of, openness is the first step and acknowledgement's the second step. And I think that that's important, just to speak out loud and someone to say, look, I acknowledge that I've got a fear of this or I've got a fear of that. That is actually like one of the steps moving forward. But we shouldn't be afraid of the word energy or energy healing or energy releasing. I like releasing rather than healing, because I'm not sure if we're healing anything, but what we are doing is actually just releasing it so that now our line goes straight back down again and we don't have to do all these roadblocks, dancing around all these different things that are actually sort of going on, if that makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about what I see energy blocks as, we've talked about whether you can release them yourself, and we've talked about the power of an energy circle or getting someone else to actually help you with those. Okay, now we're actually going to talk about the process that I do, and there are different ways you can do this, but this is a process that I do to actually move an energy block for myself, or if I'm working with someone else, to actually help them move an energy block as well. So we talked about number one, which is this little finger in my OCD brain, is openness. So it's actually having that openness to say, okay, I'm going to try this and see whether this is going to work. Sorry, that's my little cavoodle. And then we've got number two, which is acknowledgement. And acknowledgement is super important too, because it is actually kind of the activation of saying, okay, I'm aware that you're there. I can see and I can feel that energy block. And that is what I'm actually going to deal with today. And by doing that, you're starting to sort of chip away at the edges of it, and you're saying, okay, right, I'm not going to let you scare me anymore. I'm not going to let you be there. I'm not going to let you be a roadblock for me. I am going to actually open that. And, I'm not going to go into too much depth because there's layers that are attached to that. And I think that I might do that in another video, which is sort of more advanced energy moving. And just keep this at a really nice, clean, easy level so we can all understand it. Okay, so number three is movement. So what we actually want to do is we want to start moving that energy so that we can get it out of our roadblock, right? So currently it's stuck energy. And so the aim is to actually get that energy to move. And if it's not too big a block, we should be able to actually move or release it down and get rid of the energy, or distribute it back to where it should be. Or we can chip away at it so that we go from a big ball to a smaller ball to a smaller ball to something really little. Okay. And then once we release that, so then the fifth step is to either repeat, so go back to here, openness, okay, I'm going to give this a try, acknowledgement, this is what my thing is, I have a fear of, in my case, I did an energy block for a fear of drowning after I had a drowning incident. The third one was moving, so I want to move that energy, and the fourth one was releasing and letting go of that energy. And if you keep doing that, if it's a big one, you've got to keep doing it. If it's not, you sort of fall into this category where you go, okay, I feel like I've done that for now. I'm going to go out in my life. I'm going to see what doors have been opened for me now. And so the fifth one is is new pathways, opening new pathways. So don't just get stuck in releasing negative energy or energy blocks. You should also try and get in the habit of setting new pathways forward, intentions to move forward. So it's like, okay, my brain has been trained to come here to go, oh no, I'm meeting my in-laws. I'm, my new partner's in-laws. I stuff up when this happens. I don't want this to happen. You start to release that energy. You start to go, you get to here, but your brain's always going, hang on a minute, that block's not there anymore. I've got to retrain it. So you're actually putting a pathway back in there. So don't forget to actually put a positive pathway back in and actually start to open up things to say, I'm going to have a really good relationship with these people as well. So I want some of my energy to go, not to go a habit, to go back to here. I want it to start moving forward and just see what I can do. And then you go out and you try it in small steps. And, if it's meeting new people, you go and, meet a friend of a friend that might be aware, and then you just see how that goes. And you're like, hey, that went really well. I didn't have the anxiety beforehand, or I was still super nervous. I'm going to come back to the drawing board. I'm going to do this, but I'm also going to work on that from a physical point of view. I'm actually going to say to myself, when I'm there, I'm going to do this quick little technique for releasing my energy, and I'm going to go and see how I can actually do this. So it's about doing the work beforehand, and it's actually about doing the physical work as well, like retraining your body to actually say, I can do this and I'm safe, and I don't need to be anxious around this. And actually, step 5 might even open up a really nice friendship with me. You might meet your partner, your best friend, your new job, whatever it is. You may actually be able to move forward because you've been able to put these steps in place. So let's do one, and I'm going to do fear, because I think fear for most people exists. So I very rarely see anyone who doesn't have fear. In fact, the only time I see that is when someone is very, 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 very ill and about to die. And even then I see a small roadblock of fear. But it's funny when you get to the road, the end of the road, for some people, the need for fear actually dissipates, and they actually have a very calm passing. And part of it is because fear is our friend. I have been told, by being able to spend some time with someone who was dying recently, and we had this weird little journey, and we were speaking to past spirits, and they explained to us that fear is our friend because it actually keeps us safe. So everyone will have fear there because fear keeps us safe. It keeps us from going to the edge of a cliff and stepping too far forward. It stops us from, doing stupid things that actually could end up being harmful for ourselves. So we want fear. It's don't just jump in the deep end of the pool unless you can swim. It's sort of that kind of, tool that keeps us safe. So we're not trying to get rid of fear altogether. What we're trying to do is find a fear that is a roadblock. So it's one that is, let's go with a car accident, but you can choose your own sort of fear. Or even, in my case, I did one for when I was in a kayaking thing a few years ago, and I nearly drowned. I was under for a while in an area that they said we cannot get caught in there. If we do, people have drowned there, you very rarely pop out. And I did pop out, which was lovely, from this hole, but battered and bruised and a few broken bones. But mostly fingers, thankfully, so it wasn't too bad. But I then wouldn't get back in a kayak, and I live on the water, and I love water is my thing. So I was terribly upset by the fact that I couldn't do this anymore. And I couldn't even put a life jacket on and, step out into shallow water. I just didn't want to do this, and it sort of interfered with our lives because friends would come up and we would take them kayaking, and my husband and I loved to go in the water together. Anyway, after I did this energy block work, I went back to the thing, and I actually to the river, and where my husband and I got his watering hole over summer nearly every night, and we cool off and we have a chat, and it's sort of like our our meeting place. And I got there and I just dived under the water and swam across to the little beach area in the middle of the river. And he was just like, what happened? And I was just like, oh, I didn't even think about it. Like I wasn't afraid of it at all. And I still had the full memory of that. But when people spoke about water or drowning, I didn't have that immediate like, oh my gosh, and my guard didn't go up straight away before I even got there. I was able to sort of get those guards down so that I went there and I knew that I'd swum there many times before. This wasn't where the drowning nearly happened. Wasn't when the previous drowning said that they'd told me about happened. So I didn't attach that to this anymore. I moved that experience and that energy away. And so I now just had my general fear of how much of the current going. No, I can do that. It's not very far. I can swim there easily. I went back to that sort of standard fear of risk, I suppose. And then I went in further than I had before as well. I was doing a lot of things more than I used to. So I'm going to do a little technique with you now, and it'll only last a few minutes. We don't need to do this for too long, but you can actually do this for as long as it feels comfortable. And I tend to use my hands, as you've probably, if you're watching this rather than listening to it, apologies, I have very vocal hands. They move around the whole time. So I use my hands, and they tend to go into a circular form. And what I do when I feel that is there's energy that comes out of this part of my hand and this part of my hand, and it builds up in there to the point that I will be able to feel that energy. And sometimes you'll see my hands go further apart. If it is a really big energy, especially when I'm helping someone else with it, they can go really big, and I sort of don't even notice that that's happening. But the pressure and the energy associated with whatever the trauma we're talking about, or the situation or the block, is actually sort of growing as we go. And so you can do whatever you want. You can. A lot of people like to put their hands across their legs and put their hands on their knees, but you can do whatever makes you feel comfortable. I will, for the sake of showing you my technique, I'm going to keep my hands there, and look, I encourage you to try it, see whether it does. You may actually feel the energy yourself. My hands get very, very hot when I'm doing it, so it's sort of like a transfer of energy through my whole body, through my hands. Okay, so number one, openness. So we're all open to doing this moving forward. And then secondly, we're going to acknowledge. So in this case, we're going to acknowledge a fear, which you can actually say whatever fear you want. For those who have been in a vehicle accident, I'm going to work with you on this one as being a fear of getting back into a vehicle. But put your own fear sort of within this. Or if you want to do something completely different, then absolutely you can do this into here as well. So what we're actually going to do is I'm going to put my hands up like this, and I'll be closing my eyes to do this, and I'll actually talk you through the process of what I'm doing. So the next one is trying to acknowledgement and then movement. Okay, so I'm going to start with a nice breath in. And out. Now, if you feel a bit like you've got stuff going everywhere, you can do that for a little bit. Just center yourself. Like, try and pull your left and your right in sort of into one sort of parallel line. And for me, I'm trying to pull that energy into my hands. So you can try and do that. And I can see that. So in my third eye, if people want to call it that, I can actually see the ball of energy actually starting to develop, and I can feel it between my hands all the way down to my fingertips, but strongly in the palm of my hands. Now, you might not feel anything at all, and that is absolutely fine. It's just that the way that I do energy work, I tend to be my physical body feels it a lot. So we're going to actually put our hands together like this, or sit with your hands on your knees, whoever you are, and we're going to bring forward the thought of the block that we're going to get today. So I'm going to bring forward fear, and I'm going to put that in the center of my energy ball. Okay, so I'm going to put the fear and then put the details that are attached for you into that fear. And so you're literally just basically saying in your head, you can say it out loud if you want, and you can say, I'm placing the block of fear, the incident or accident that happened in the vehicle, into the center of my hands, into the center of this energy ball. And I'm going to start, and I always start with a figure 8, and I start moving energy around those words or that ball. So move them around the ball and get that ball actually moving. And you can have, in some cases, I actually put a little rose, like I start with a rose, and I actually put the words into the rose. And that's an easy way for you to then concentrate on that rose and start moving that around, like spin it around. Open the petals, shut the petals, open the petals, shut the petals. Just get the energy that is stuck moving. Now, as I'm doing this, I can actually feel in my hands pressure. As I'm opening and closing those petals, it's like it's going back and forth, back and forth. And that's a really good sign because the energy is actually wanting to move. So I haven't been in a car accident myself, but I am doing this for everyone who has. Now also, my whole vision has turned blue, very, very, very blue. And as I keep doing this, it's changing color. It's getting some yellow into it, so it's going to a green. And I'm going to see whether I can bring it back to, it's purpley green, purple, and back. It's going to stay purple, I think. Okay, so you've got number 3, which is movement, and now we're going to release this. Sometimes this can be hard, so we're going to take that energy and we're going to release that to the center of the earth. It's a good way to put it, or if you would like to, and you prefer to, you can release it up. So into the sun or the moon, depending on what time of day it is. I've got the beautiful sun on my back, so you could do it after there. I tend to release it to the center of the earth. Oh, it's gone to pink now. So mine is ready to be releasing. As I'm talking, it's dropping away, and it's dropping all the way down into the center of the earth. Now, some of that's dropping really fast and some of it's not. So what I would do for the bits that are still stuck, I'll either start again another day, or I will put some effort roses, that I call them. So I actually get white roses and I put hundreds of them, sometimes 1 or 2, 3, 4, but often hundreds of them, and I put them all visually around this center energy ball or this rose, and I actually start helping them drop it. So I am giving energy to that to drop with the effort of these roses all the way to the center until it's gone. Now, and it's released, and I can feel it in my hands when the energy starts to dissipate and go away. And then I usually shake off my hands, give them a good shake. Top of my head, I always feel there's lots of energy around the front of my face. So, and if I have a cup of tea like I have now, I always have a drink, which I started beforehand. I forgot I had it here. So that is surprisingly exhausting for me, and it was probably because I was tuning in for all those people who are listening who have had a vehicle accident, or even can connect into your own energy for what you're doing. So it gets quite tiring. So now my next step would be to, if it was a car accident, for instance, I hadn't been in a car since, or I hadn't let someone else drive, would be to try and go and do a short trip with someone, or a short trip myself, and see whether it actually affects me, and then work on that, knowing that if you're about to get in the car, you might just quickly put your hands up, take a deep breath, acknowledge that you've got a fear, quickly turn the fear out and release it. and then hop in the car. And if you start to drive along and you're feeling it again, just do it again. Like, just pull those little bits of anxiety up, those little tiny blocks, and actually start releasing it. But we can do this for anything for the day. Like, if you're walking into a room where there's someone that's annoying you normally, like a colleague at work, and you can hear their voice before you even get there, quickly pull the rose up, put their name in it. Don't even have to use your hands if you don't want to look silly. Don't have to close your eyes. You can literally just sort of pull it up in front of you, put them into it, and then release it down. And then you'll go in and you'll be surprised how that actually makes a difference. It's not going to cure it for you, although sometimes I've actually found that it is quite powerful, and it does. And it probably means that there was not a lot of surface. It was kind of a surface issue, and I was just had a guard up that I didn't realize that person, and the guard drops down, and then I'm like, they don't actually annoy me that much anymore. I'm not even listening to that. Whereas beforehand it was, their voice was even going to irritate me because, they were negative to everyone at work or something, and it frustrated me. And then I, sort of drop that surface issue, and I'm like, oh, they don't even bother me anymore, and I can get along with the positive, more positive things at work, and not have such anxiety that sort of built up from something that was probably so minor. So what do you expect after you've done that? Sometimes you can get tired. Secondly, that you may have to do that sort of repetitively if it's a bigger issue, or say you have something that's an anxiety of food anxiety, like a diet anxiety. You might start with one type of food, and then you can go to the next and the next. I'm actually gluten-free. I have a gluten allergy and have been gluten-free for, well, I'm going to say maybe 8 years. And I know at the start I actually had some energy blocks to do with going out or going to someone's for dinner, and I had to really work on actually releasing those, because they would say, do you want to come for dinner? And I'd go, yeah. And they'd be just like, oh my gosh, how am I going to have to tell them I'm gluten-free? What if they accidentally, give me gluten? Because it does happen. I have to carry an EpiPen with me now. Do I show them they've got an EpiPen? What do I argue with the chef because the chef at a restaurant tries to give me pearl barley and say it's not, you had all those sort of things. So you built up these shields and tears. And now I don't. Now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to put these few things in place to make sure that they understand how severe my allergy is. And I will either choose not to eat when I go sometimes to functions. Usually don't eat, especially when there's like platter things. I'll eat beforehand. I still go and have a really good night. Sometimes I offer to have people at my house for dinner. So you put up these new sort of tools that you need to as well. It's not just like you can click your finger, energy release, gone. I still have that problem, and so I still have those fears and those needs. They're just not built up with all this anxiety, and I can think clearer in what to do forward, and I can start putting plans in place to make sure that I feel safe and I feel like I can go to other people's houses, or I can eat with other people, invite them over. So needless to say, I have a lot of things at my house, in my gluten-free house. I hope that has helped you. I hope that you can actually follow the steps that I've actually done. Feel free to kind of save that if you want and just go over it. Definitely, I'm open to any questions that you've got. And also there's some really, really lovely energy workers out there. So seek out someone if you've got something you think's too big for you to try yourself. But then at the same time, don't be afraid to try. You might actually be really good at releasing energy, and in particular we are better at releasing our own energy than anyone else is for ourselves. Sometimes we're not good at identifying them, but once it's been identified, because that's your sort of next step is actually to be acknowledging what it is. But once you have acknowledged what it is and you sort of be truthful to yourself within that, you'll actually find that you are the most powerful person to release your own energy. But find an energy circle in your area. There's energy circles online. I know that we're going to run some through WeSee, which is my World Energy Circle group, in the near future. And and also there's some really cool energy healers out there. Or energy releases, intuitives, whatever they want to call themselves. So seek them out and have a better, happier life. And that's really what I would love for everyone to be feeling more love and happiness. Okay, bye.